We have so much folding to do, you guys, like so much. Yay! Hello, my friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello, my name is Lisa Schwartz. On these days, we basically fold laundry while we talk about some subject matter. You clicked on the video. Today we are talking all about sorority rushing and my experience with sorority rushing. I'm gonna start because I have so much to do. This all came because I just finished the Bama Rush documentary on HBO or Max. And I just feel like I have to talk about it. If you haven't seen that documentary, this will still be relevant. But if you have, then I'm excited for you to get in on this conversation with me. So let me back up and explain the documentary really fast, and then I'll give you my experience because I did in fact rush for a sorority. Now I'm nervous that I have stuff in my teeth. No, we're good. Okay. So this documentary came out because apparently, I'm not on TikTok, but you guys probably know this better than me. Last year during, I think it was Alabama University or Alabama State, during their rush season, which is when sorority and fraternities get together and recruit new members, and it's a big to-do. Apparently on TikTok, Bama Rush went viral, and people were following all these different girls who were documenting via TikTok their experience of rush, and people became really obsessed with it. So this one woman goes on to make a documentary about it the following year that now has just come out. And it's controversial because the community, the fraternity and sorority community, didn't want this to happen because, you know, fraternities and sororities are very secretive. They're a club. There's a lot of stuff that goes on apparently behind closed doors that is sacred, and some of it maybe not so kosher, for lack of a better term. So they were really upset that this woman was doing this documentary and blah, 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 blah. I won't spoil it for you, but it's a really interesting look into the Greek culture, into Greek life, into the system. You can take from it what you want. You can make your judgments about it as you see fit to your judgments. I just kind of watched it without any opinions because I was just curious, and I really, really enjoyed it. The most fascinating part to me was the adults that were that were involved with this documentary. Not only the lady who was doing the documentary, who was directing it, and whose idea was it to spearhead this, but I was super fascinated. They have these rush consultants. They're basically adults who, as their full-time job, they've started these companies where they get hired to consult with girls who are going through the rush process. So think about when you a pageant trainer who you hire for your kid, who teaches your kid how to be in a pageant, and picks out your outfits and takes the pictures for you, and helps you practice your speeches. I mean, a very lucrative career. It was just a little jarring to watch happen. And I was like, whoa, there's a whole career of these consultants. And then I was like, could I do that as a career? How much do they charge? My goodness, I can imagine that people spend so much money on that. Along with the outfits that these girls put together and buy for Rush Week. Just hundreds and hundreds of dollars, if not thousands. Anyhow, really interesting documentary. I have many opinions in terms of how it was shot, and I wish kind of that we would have seen more, and word on the street is that there was a lot more juicy stuff that they ended up not putting in. So yeah, it was interesting. I kind of wish, this is just my personal opinion, I kind of wish that it was, I really liked the director and her whole story. I won't spoil it for you, but she has a whole backstory as to how she relates to this. But I kind of wanted to see it more. Ooh, I think it would have been a little bit more interesting, in my opinion, if it was directed by someone that was like actively going through the process, but maybe that would have put them in a vulnerable position in terms of getting in to these sororities, because this one chick who wasn't involved with the project at all had her t-shirt, like, this is a little bit of a spoiler, she had her t-shirt like tied back with a rubber band, a black rubber band, and they thought it was a microphone and they kicked her out. And she like tried to go to the dean and talk about it, and the dean, like, I guess they couldn't do anything, so she wasn't able to rush a sorority, and that's all because they thought she was like part of this documentary, which goes to show like they really don't want cameras like involved in this at all. They really want to keep this secretive, which, you know, ultimately lends to this conversation of like, well, what's really going on? Well, if you have ever been part of Greek culture, you know exactly what's going on. I had a brief run-in with it. Definitely don't have a full experience of it, but I did rush for sororities, hence the video. Okay, so I went to UC Irvine, which is a commuter school, meaning that like the majority of students that go to that school, they commute in and don't live on campus. Because of this, or one of the reasons, it lends itself to be one of the reasons why Greek culture life on our campus was not a big deal. Like, it was there, it was relevant or prevalent, but it wasn't like some of these other schools where it's like Greek is life, Greek is like all that there is. Like this Bama show, this Bama Rush thing. So, regardless of how far I ended up going in this process, I don't think even had I, spoiler alert, I didn't join a sorority, but had I joined one, I don't think it would have been as, the experience wouldn't have been really in line with like some of these bigger schools with bigger Greek culture. Jeff went to a school and rushed for a fraternity, and if you ever want to hear his story, it would be kind of fun to hear. I've heard bits and pieces, and it's fascinating and also horrifying, but he went to a school with big Greek culture, so his experience was completely different, and had I been at his school, my experience would have been completely different. Anyways, I don't remember if I had the intention when I got to school of doing this, but I had friends who went to school either like a couple months before me, because we were on the UC system, so we started later freshman year, and or like my cousin was in a sorority, and like I knew people in sorority, and I always thought, okay, maybe it's a good way to meet people, because, you know, it really is like daunting to try to make new friends, especially at a whole new school. I went to a really small high school, so I, you know, transferred to or started at this big college, and I just figured, okay, I have my dorm room friends. I quickly made those, but that maybe this would be another opportunity to find a group of people that I really connected with. So I decided that I was going to do this process. Mind you, this all happens at the very beginning of the year. Also at the very beginning of the year, I was in the theater program. If you're involved in theater arts at all, you know that theater arts is like all consuming. It's its own community, it's basically its own fraternity, and it's all time consuming because you have the productions, which take up so much time, rehearsals, etc., etc. So at the same time as Rush, Sorority Rush, I was also doing like the massive year's worth of auditioning for all the plays. So basically at our school, you would do this one big audition at the beginning of the year, and they would cast you for the full year for all the productions. And then along the way, there were like smaller student run productions, but it was like a big deal. Like all new students, every year you would come in, you would audition, and then the callback process would happen. And that was extensive. So it was like 2 rushes at once, on top of getting acquainted with my dorm and like getting situated there. So there was like a lot going on. So my memory, this was a long time ago. Let's see, I started college in 05. Whoa. So that was a long time ago. So part of me that my like details are definitely like a little bit blurry. But I have specific memories. So the first like intro to Rush is you go on this like tour essentially where you go in groups and you go from house to house, and at each house they like, you know, they do the clapping thing. It's not as like crazy as you see in the TikToks, or at least it wasn't then. And then they'll like take you into the house and they basically like kind of give you an overview of like what that house is all about, what they're kind of looking for, their history. They kind of walk you through. You see the pictures like of all the past members, and they kind of just like give you a spiel. And I can't remember if in that first round you like talk to members. I think you do. You basically like small chat, which is what they go over with these consultants in this documentary, like how to small chat and what to small chat about. The rule or like the guidelines that this chick was giving, this consultant was giving this one girl, was so funny to me. Things not to talk about, like don't talk about politics, don't talk about money, don't talk about boys, don't talk about booze. I'm sure I talked about all those things. So we did that, and I remember that like very, very specifically. So then there was that, and then I think like we either then at that point like selected which ones, well at that point you were like, okay, I know like which ones I'm kind of interested in, and I really was interested in, oh god, not Tri Delta. I can't remember. I was interested in this like one specific one, and I think it's because there were a few girls that were part of the theater program that were in it, and I was like, okay, perfect. Like that would be the one I'd want to go to. I think this is Delta Gamma. And then you like can identify the ones that you're like, yeah, that's like not my vibe. So from there, I think the next thing was like either they invited you. No. Yeah. They invited you if they were interested in you like coming back to talk to them some more. Something along those lines. Either you identified them, but I'm pretty sure it was like they identified you. And so like you basically had selects. So the first day you went and you looked at everything, and then the second time you're gonna go to your select houses and have like more conversations with these people as they begin to like essentially vet you and see if like you're a good match for them. And I have this specific memory of me like getting ready in the dorm, and this one kid in my dorm, Casey was like, ugh. Now in retrospect, I'm like, Casey was like such a chauvinist, and like he was such like a know-it-all, like, ugh. I have just like a bitter taste in my mouth about Casey. But Casey, I remember, came into my room and he's like, why are you getting dressed like that? Like, why are you trying to be someone you're not? Or something along those lines, because I was like getting like all dolled up, you know, trying to like look the part. And that like clicked with me. It wasn't nice, and he had no right to tell me that, but I actually think he might have been right. I'll give him that. That like, you know, I definitely was trying to find myself in this process, which is like what you do in college. It's like all about trying to figure out who you are, you know, high school, college, you know. And so I just kind of like, that stuck with me. That was the first thing that I was like, yeah, I don't know, but I'm gonna follow this through. So I went to the event, and I don't have much memory of that, but I'm sure it was just like more schmoozing and more small talking. And what's interesting to me is that I was even drawn to this because I feel like I've always had really nice girlfriends, and I have like the best group of girlfriends, but I felt like I've always been like on the outskirts of like cool girls. Like, I don't know, and not until recently have I really been able to like feel confident talking to any girl. Like, as of like making new friends was always like really hard, and I felt like I was always just kind of different. And I think it's, you know, a lot of it was I was trying to figure out who I was and find confidence in how I looked, how I presented myself. I think like in high school, I was always friends with the popular girls, but I also was in the theater department and was more comfortable with like the theater kids. And so I feel like I always kind of vacillated in between groups. So it was interesting to me that I even like was drawn to try out sororities. Does this make sense? I feel like if you've been watching my videos for a while, you like know kind of socially where I struggle and where I fall, and the history of me. So anyways, I'm just thinking, oh, it's interesting. I was even drawn to try this because it's kind of out of my element. But I think maybe also because I was in college, I was like, well, I might as well like try all the things and give myself the best shot. And like, maybe this is what you're supposed to do when you're here. So that second thing goes, and meanwhile, I'm at this point have auditioned for everything, and we're waiting to hear from callbacks, okay? And I'm a freshman, and the callbacks are from, you know, freshman through senior, along with the grad program. So it's like super competitive and kind of a big deal if you get a callback for anything, especially as a freshman. So in the theater department. Sorry, I'm jumping from theater to sorority now. So I remember very specifically, next comes the day when you hear from the sorority you're interested in, and they like invite you to like the final whatever. And I think you pick your top 2 houses. And if I remember correctly, the house that I was really interested in did want me to come, but the day that I was supposed to go there fell on the same time and day, or night rather, of a callback that I got. I nailed my audition and I got a lot of callbacks. And I remember getting callback, it was for Macbeth. I remember it so specifically, for one of the witches. Which was like a big deal again as a freshman to get the call. So I was torn because I was like, well, I gotta go to this callback, but like, I really am interested in this house. And I remember reaching out to the house, and I can't remember through what means because we didn't have like cell phones. Did we email? I don't remember. I don't remember how the communication went, but I remember reaching out to the house, and it was kind of like, well, if you can't come, you can't come, you know, like, or like you can't join. It was like you kind of had to pick. And at that moment, I was like, okay, this is like my crossroads here. Like, this is the 2 sides of me. the hanging out with the cool kids and the drama kids sides, like looking at each other being like, you have to pick a road. Like, you just can't do them both. And I knew girls, like I had said, that were in the theater program that I'd done both. They just must have timed out better for them, and it was like meant to be for them. But for me, it was one of those like kismet moments, I think, in the long run, where it was just like, okay, you have to make a choice, 2 roads, like, can't have both, pick one. And I think I barely even like thought twice, on top of Casey's comment in my ear. And I was like, well, I'm going to the callback. I gotta go to the callback. So I choose the callback. I go to the callback. I don't end up getting into that show, ironically, after all that. Although I did end up getting into a bunch of shows that year, which took up all of my time and was like the best thing ever. But let me skip back. I'll come back to that in a second. But basically, so that I had to pass on the one house that I really wanted, but I still got pursued really heavily by Tri Delta, and I think it's because I was blonde, honestly. They were all just blonde, and so I ended up like after that being like, no thank you. Like, I didn't even go to pursue it even further, although I was sort of honored that they wanted my blonde face in their house. But I ultimately like had made that decision, 2 roads, and I'm so glad that I did, because like I said, theater was its own fraternity. I spent all my time and energy in that community, working in productions, student-run productions, being in productions, taking classes. I ended up getting honors in theater, so I was able to take classes with the older classmen, like really a lot of great opportunities, and I made just like the best friends ever through the program, friends that I'm still friends with. So I ultimately like found my tribe and found my fraternity. It just looked a lot different. So that was my personal experience with rushing. I don't remember anything that was like super crazy. It definitely like wears on your ego, and there's definitely like a lot of pressure. Like I said, I was like trying to look a certain way and act a certain way and be a certain version of me, but I don't remember it being anything like the documentary that I saw, which is wild. And like, I can only imagine, one, at those kind of schools, just how wild and like amped up the whole process is, but two, now with social media, just how much more pressure there is around it. I think like there's pros and cons to it, and like I think everyone should make their own decision, and if you want to try it, you should absolutely try it. I just think that you should be very fully aware of like how much it could really like eat you alive if you don't have the mentality or like right head on your shoulders. I think that's a very vulnerable time as like a young adult trying to figure out who you are. And you know, it's kind of like speed dating. It's like dating, like you're doing the small talk, you're getting dressed up, you're putting your best foot forward, and then you're just like hoping that like they want you as much as you want them. And that is a lot on one person's brain and like psyche. And in this documentary, these sweet girls are like still trying, like admittedly like trying to find their place and trying to like feel confident. And I think that added pressure is sometimes maybe not the best thing for you, but for other people it's the best because it gives them a community and a place to like put their energy in. You know, if you find the right group that's accepting and positive and is doing great things, then it's wonderful. So I don't know, that's just my experience, and I wanted to just share it with you because I don't know if I've ever even spoke about, I don't even know if Jeff knows that I rushed for a sorority and how different my life would be if I had joined it. I'm not sure, but again, at UC Irvine, it was kind of like a watered down version of the Greek system, but super interesting. I would love to hear, sorry, whoa, oh my God, y'all, I'm getting big. I'd love to hear your experiences if you had rushed. And I know like once you get in, like pledging is like a whole nother thing. That's where Jeff has some like crazy pledge stories. If you guys want to hear his pledge stories, maybe he will sit down and share them with me, or with you guys, because I love hearing them. I think they're wild. I think the fraternity ones are a little bit more wild than the sorority ones, but maybe not. Depends where you are. Yeah, so if you have any stories, definitely let me know down below. And if you saw the documentary, would love to hear your opinion on it. Did you enjoy it? Did you like it from the advantage, or the the vantage point brain of the director, or would you have preferred not having that be part of the story? Yeah, I just would really like to hear your take on it. Hope that you guys enjoy this. I haven't done one of these kind of story times in a while. Super fun. If you have any ideas for further story times, let me know, or if there's a subject matter you want me to talk about, absolutely let me know. Thank you for keeping me company. I've been putting this off for so long, so I'm glad we did this together. I love you guys very much, and I will see you next time. Okay, bye.